Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone. If resting makes you anxious, it's not because you're lazy, it's because your body learned that stillness was never safe. Most people think rest should feel natural, something you fall into easily once the work is done. But for so many, the opposite happens. The moment the noise quiets, the body tightens, the mind starts scanning for problems. A strange restlessness creeps in, as if slowing down has triggered an internal alarm, and that confusion often turns inward. Why can't I relax like everyone else? What's wrong with me? Here's the truth that rarely gets named gently. If rest feels uncomfortable, unsafe, or even frightening, it's not because you're lazy, broken, or undisciplined. It's because at some point your nervous system learned that stillness was not safe. For many people, movement became survival. Doing more meant being valued. Staying busy meant staying needed. Being productive meant staying invisible to criticism, disappointment, or rejection. Somewhere along the way, rest stopped being neutral. It became risky, because when you weren't doing, achieving, fixing, or helping, you were left alone with feelings you didn't have space for back then. The body remembers what the mind forgets. Even if your life is calmer now, even if no one is demanding anything in this moment, your system may still be operating under old rules. Rules that say, if you stop, you'll fall behind. If you pause, you'll be exposed. If you rest, you'll lose your worth. So, when you sit down, when you finally lie still, when the phone is quiet and the room is calm, your body doesn't read that as peace. It reads it as danger. That tightness in your chest, that urge to get up and do something, that guilt whispering you should be more useful. Those are not character flaws. They are protective responses shaped by a time when rest really did come at a cost. Many people grew up in environments where being strong meant being silent, where exhaustion was praised, where slowing down was seen as weakness, or where there simply wasn't room to rest because responsibility came too early. In those spaces, the body learns to stay alert, to anticipate needs, to keep moving so nothing falls apart. And that vigilance doesn't automatically shut off just because life changes. That's why rest can feel so exposing. When you stop moving, the armor comes off. You feel what you've been carrying. Old sadness, unnamed grief, loneliness, fear. And your system says, no, we don't go here. We survive by staying busy. Understanding this changes everything, because it shifts the question from why can't I rest to what did I need to survive that taught me not to? And that question is filled with compassion, not judgment. Rest isn't just about time or permission, it's about safety. And safety isn't a switch you flip. It's something you relearn slowly, gently, in small moments where you show your body that stillness doesn't equal collapse, that nothing bad happens when you pause, that you are allowed to exist without performing. The first step isn't forcing yourself to relax. It's noticing. Noticing the thoughts that show up when you slow down. Noticing the tension without trying to fix it. Noticing the urge to earn your rest instead of receiving it. Awareness is where healing begins, because you can't soothe what you're still judging. You don't need to push through this discomfort. You need to listen to it. Because beneath the restlessness is a system that worked very hard to protect you, and it deserves patience as it learns a new truth. You are safe now, even when you stop. For many people, the struggle with rest isn't just about time or energy. It's about identity. It's about what you learned quietly and repeatedly, about what makes you worthy of love, belonging, and safety. Long before you had words for it, messages were forming inside you. Messages that said being useful mattered more than being human, that being strong was better than being honest, that needing rest meant you were falling short. Most of us didn't consciously choose these beliefs. They were absorbed through praise that only came when you achieved something, through attention that showed up when you were helpful, quiet, or impressive, through environments where emotions were inconvenient and vulnerability felt dangerous. You learned to read the room, you learned what was rewarded, and you adapted. If you were celebrated for being responsible early, you may have learned that exhaustion was proof of value. If you were needed emotionally by others, you may have learned that slowing down meant letting people down. If you were overlooked unless you performed, you may have learned that visibility had to be earned through effort. Over time, worth stopped feeling inherent. It started feeling conditional. That's why rest can feel so uncomfortable, because rest asks you to exist without producing, without fixing, without proving. And when your sense of worth has been built on effort, stillness can feel like failure. The body may be lying still, but the mind is working overtime, scanning for justification. Have I done enough? Did I earn this? Shouldn't I be doing more? Underneath those questions is fear. Fear of being seen as inadequate, fear of being forgotten, fear of being exposed as not enough if you stop moving. These fears don't mean you're insecure. They mean you were taught that love and acceptance were tied to output, not presence. Many people learned this in subtle ways. No one ever said, "You are only valuable if you're productive." Instead, it sounded like praise for being the strong one, compliments for never needing help, admiration for always pushing through. Over time, you internalize the idea that your needs were secondary, that rest was indulgent, and that resilience meant self-neglect. So when you try to rest now, your nervous system protests. Not because rest is wrong, but because it conflicts with the identity you built to survive. An identity that says, I am the one who holds it together. I am the one who keeps going. I am the one who doesn't stop. Letting go of that identity can feel terrifying, because if you're not the achiever, the helper, the dependable one, who are you? And will you still be loved? This is where the guilt shows up. Guilt for resting when others are struggling. Guilt for slowing down when there's still so much to do. Guilt for choosing yourself in a world that taught you to earn your place. But guilt is not proof that you're doing something wrong. Often it's proof that you're doing something new, something that challenges old rules, something that threatens a belief system that kept you safe once, but is now keeping you tired. There's a quiet grief in realizing this. Grief for the version of you who worked so hard to be worthy. Grief for the rest you never felt allowed to take. Grief for the moments you pushed past your limits because stopping felt more dangerous than continuing. This grief deserves space, because healing isn't just about changing habits. It's about honoring what those habits protected you from. You don't unlearn these beliefs overnight. You don't simply decide to feel worthy at rest. This work is slow and deeply emotional. It happens in moments when you notice the urge to justify your pause and gently resist it, when you feel the need to explain your tiredness and choose silence instead, when you remind yourself again and again that your value does not disappear when you are still. It also happens when you question the voice inside that demands productivity at all costs. Whose voice is that? Where did it come from? What did it help you survive? And most importantly, is it still telling the truth about who you are today? You are allowed to outgrow the beliefs that once kept you safe. You are allowed to redefine strength as self-respect, not endurance. You are allowed to rest without apology, even if it feels unfamiliar, especially if it feels unfamiliar. Rest is not something you earn at the end of your usefulness. It is a basic human need, not a reward. And the more you practice resting without proving, the more your system begins to learn a new story. A story where worth is not measured by exhaustion, where presence matters more than performance, where you don't have to break yourself to belong. This lesson is not about doing less for the sake of it. It's about releasing the belief that doing more is the only way to be enough. And as that belief softens, something remarkable begins to happen. Rest stops feeling like a threat. Stillness becomes tolerable. And eventually, slowly, gently, it starts to feel like home. For so many people, the idea of pausing without explanation feels radical. There's a quiet, persistent voice inside that whispers, if you stop, people will notice. If you rest, they will judge. If you pause, something will be lost. And that voice can feel relentless. It can make sitting down, closing your eyes, or just breathing feel almost impossible. Because pausing without apology asks you to step outside the rules you've been living by for years. The rules that linked your worth to your usefulness, your strength to your endurance, and your value to how much you could give before collapsing. Courage in this context isn't loud or flashy. It doesn't roar or demand recognition. Courage is quiet. It's the willingness to acknowledge the fear that comes with stillness and to take the risk anyway. It's the small daily act of giving yourself permission to exist without performing. It's the subtle defiance of the internal narrative that says you must keep going to be seen, needed, or loved. When you start practicing this kind of courage, you begin to notice something profound. Your restlessness is not laziness or failure. It's a signal, a communication from your body and mind that you've been conditioned to move as a way to survive. And now it's asking to be rewritten. It's uncomfortable at first because your nervous system has spent years interpreting inactivity as danger. Pausing triggers tension, an urge to justify, a mental checklist of unfinished business. It feels wrong, and yet the very act of pausing is what teaches your system that it can be safe. This courage doesn't require you to make grand gestures. It starts in simple moments, taking a breath before answering your phone, allowing yourself to close the laptop without guilt, saying no to one more task without fear of reprisal. It's in these tiny choices that your body begins to relearn safety, where the idea of rest starts to feel not like a threat, but like a possibility. The struggle is real. You might find yourself thinking, if I stop now, someone will need me. If I pause, the world will keep moving without me. If I rest, I will fall behind. These thoughts are familiar because they have been reinforced over years, sometimes decades. They are not evidence that you are failing. They are evidence of how deeply you've internalized a system of worth based on output. Recognizing them, naming them, and gently challenging them is the first step toward true courage. The courage to exist without constant justification. Courage also means facing discomfort without the need to fix it immediately. When rest makes you anxious, you are invited to sit with that anxiety, to notice it, and to allow it to exist alongside stillness. There is strength in observing the fear, acknowledging it, and choosing to continue anyway. Each time you practice this, your nervous system adjusts, little by little. It learns that stillness is not catastrophic, that presence without performance is safe, and that vulnerability is not weakness, but strength. A key aspect of this courage is patience with yourself. You will not become comfortable with rest overnight. The mind will resist. Old beliefs will push back. Tension will rise. That is expected. The work is not about eliminating the discomfort entirely, but about showing up to it consistently. The act of returning to stillness again and again, even when it feels unsafe, is what rewires the conditioned responses that have kept you in perpetual movement. Ultimately, the courage to pause without apology is transformative. It shifts your relationship with yourself, with your body, and with the concept of worth. It teaches that your value does not depend on ceaseless productivity, that your presence matters more than your output, and that vulnerability is a gateway to deeper connection with yourself. The quiet bravery of taking moments for yourself becomes a practice of self-compassion, a radical act of personal integrity, and a reclaiming of the very energy that was spent sustaining survival strategies long after they were necessary. Every deliberate pause is a declaration. I am allowed to exist as I am. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to reclaim my worth outside of doing. And each time you make that choice, your system slowly learns that safety is not something you must earn. It is something you can embody. You are not less for resting. You are more aligned, more present, and more whole. The challenge then is simple but profound. Allow yourself to rest, even when it triggers discomfort. Sit with the tension, observe the fear, and breathe anyway. Do not apologize for your stillness, and do not try to fix it. Each pause is a rehearsal in courage, a lesson in emotional precision, and a quiet revolution against a lifetime of learned urgency. In this courageous act, the path to safety, peace, and self-trust begins. When the body and mind have spent years running on constant vigilance, the idea of true safety can feel almost foreign. You may have spent decades moving, doing, and producing because stopping felt dangerous. And even now, when the external threats have faded or life has become calmer, your system may still behave as though stillness equals risk. Anxiety rises in quiet moments. Restlessness accompanies any pause. Even when the work is done, your body waits for the next crisis. The paradox is that the very thing you need most, safety, stillness, peace, is exactly what your body has learned to fear. Rebuilding safety inside yourself is not about external changes. It is not about making your environment perfectly calm or ensuring every responsibility is completed before you breathe. True safety is internal. It is the practice of convincing your nervous system that it can trust the present moment, that stillness is not a threat, and that you are allowed to exist without ceaseless action. This is where real transformation begins, in the quiet moments when you tell yourself, through breath, awareness, and gentle attention, that it is okay to pause. The challenge is that your nervous system has a memory far longer than your conscious mind. It remembers moments when stillness was dangerous, times when attention, energy, and effort were survival strategies. Those old protective mechanisms don't simply disappear when circumstances change. They are embedded in your muscles, your heart rate, your tension patterns, and your mental habits. Rebuilding safety means acknowledging that memory without judgment and consciously teaching your body a new truth, that you are safe here, now, even when you stop. You might begin by noticing where tension lives in your body. Maybe your shoulders tighten when you sit still. Maybe your jaw clenches when you try to breathe slowly. Maybe your stomach knots when you allow yourself to rest. These sensations are not signs of failure. They are evidence of vigilance, a system trained to protect you. And this awareness, far from being a problem to solve, is the doorway to healing. It is in observing these reactions that you start to reclaim choice, rather than be dictated to by old programming. Slow, intentional breath is one of the most effective ways to communicate safety to the body. Not forced or shallow, but deep and consistent. Breathing fully, feeling the rise and fall of your chest and abdomen, sends signals to your nervous system that the immediate threat has passed. Pairing breath with gentle acknowledgement, I am safe, I am allowed to be still, nothing is falling apart, helps reinforce the new narrative you are trying to instill. Over time, these practices teach your body that stillness does not equate to danger. Another key aspect of rebuilding safety is the gentle challenge of exposure. It's tempting to retreat whenever tension arises, to distract yourself with tasks, screens, or movement. But each time you avoid rest, the old system is reinforced. Instead, choose small, manageable exposures to stillness and calm. Start with 5 minutes of mindful sitting. Close your eyes. Notice the urge to move or justify your pause. Sit through it without judgment. Gradually increase the time, and each repetition rewires your system, teaching your body that pausing is not threatening. Safety is also relational. Even if you are physically alone, you can cultivate a sense of being held or supported internally. This means listening to your body, acknowledging its signals, and responding with gentleness rather than criticism. It means allowing yourself to feel emotions without rushing to distract or suppress them. Trust is built in moments like this, when you prove to yourself that even without external pressures, you can exist without catastrophe. Part of this process is confronting old narratives about worth, control, and responsibility. You may have internalized the belief that you must always be prepared, always anticipate, always prevent disaster. While these beliefs may have served you once, now they perpetuate tension, anxiety, and chronic stress. Rebuilding safety requires unlearning them slowly, replacing them with a more compassionate internal dialogue. I can handle what comes. I am equipped. I am allowed to pause. Repetition of this self-directed reassurance is what slowly shifts your internal landscape from hypervigilance to calm confidence. Rebuilding safety is not linear. You may feel progress one day and setback the next. You may experience sudden waves of restlessness or old fears returning. This is normal. Healing is not about perfection. It's about consistent practice and persistent compassion. Each time you return to rest, each time you acknowledge tension without judgment, each time you breathe through discomfort, you are strengthening your sense of safety. Eventually, as safety becomes more internalized, your relationship with rest transforms. Stillness stops being frightening and starts being restorative. You begin to recognize that slowing down does not mean losing your edge, falling behind, or becoming weak. Instead, it becomes an act of alignment. You reclaim the energy and focus that chronic hypervigilance stole. You experience moments of peace, that were previously unimaginable. And in these moments, you reconnect not only with your body and mind, but with your sense of self, the part that has always deserved care, attention, and reprieve. Rebuilding safety is also deeply empowering. It shifts your locus of control from external circumstances to internal regulation. It is the realization that no external pressure, no past experience, and no internal critic can dictate your ability to rest unless you allow it. By learning to feel safe within yourself, you unlock the capacity to make decisions from clarity rather than compulsion, to act from presence rather than fear, and to live with a steadiness that previously seemed out of reach. At its core, this process is about reclaiming your humanity. It's about proving to yourself that you do not need to earn stillness, approval, or peace. You are allowed to experience these simply because you exist. And when you finally embrace this truth, the world does not collapse. The responsibilities, expectations, and demands remain, but you navigate them with more presence, less anxiety, and a new awareness of your own resilience. Or, rebuilding safety is not a single act. It is a daily practice of noticing, breathing, observing, and allowing. It is patience with your body, compassion for your mind, and gentle persistence in the face of old fears. And over time, these practices transform not just your ability to rest, but your entire relationship with life, showing you that true strength and endurance are not measured by how much you do, but by how fully and safely you inhabit your own presence. When growth is measured only by what you produce, what you accomplish, or how much you endure, it can feel endless and exhausting. For many people, the idea of sustainable growth is almost foreign because they've been conditioned to equate value with performance. Every achievement, every act of endurance, every bit of effort has been proof that they are worthy. And when worth depends on ceaseless doing, rest becomes dangerous, pause feels impossible, and growth is perceived as something that only comes through struggle and sacrifice. But there is another way, a path of growth that does not require depletion, a way to expand, evolve, and thrive without burning out. Growth without exhaustion begins with a profound redefinition of what it means to be strong, capable, and worthy. It begins with the realization that your energy, your presence, and your attention are finite, and that using them wisely is not weakness, it is intelligence. It is the understanding that thriving comes from alignment, not force. When you allow yourself to rest, to feel, and to be fully present with your own humanity, you open the door to the kind of growth that is resilient, lasting, and deeply nourishing. Many people resist this idea at first because it challenges every rule they have internalized. The voice inside them says, if I stop pushing, I'll fall behind. If I pause, someone else will overtake me. If I rest, I will lose momentum. These are not flaws. They are the echoes of survival strategies that once kept you safe. But what was once protective is now limiting. And to grow without exhaustion, you must courageously examine these beliefs, question their relevance, and replace them with truths that serve your present and future self. One of the most powerful shifts in this kind of growth is the realization that self-worth is not earned through struggle or productivity. It is inherent. It is not contingent on how much you do, how much you give, or how well you perform. When you begin to internalize this, the pressure to constantly prove yourself begins to ease. You start to notice the difference between motivation and compulsion, between inspired action and driven effort. You begin to act from desire, curiosity, and aligned purpose, rather than fear, obligation, or guilt. Another aspect of sustainable growth is embracing the natural rhythm of energy and attention. The human body and mind were not designed for perpetual motion. Growth does not happen in a straight line of endless effort. It happens in cycles of action, reflection, and restoration. Allowing space for rest, reflection, and presence is not optional. It is essential. This is why the act of slowing down, of honoring your limits, and of responding with care to your own needs is transformative. It is in these pauses that insight, creativity, and clarity emerge, forces that cannot be summoned through busyness alone. Growth without exhaustion also requires trust. Trust in your own capacity to manage life without forcing every outcome, and trust in the natural unfolding of your journey. For many, this trust is hard-won because they have relied on control as a safety mechanism for years. But letting go of rigid control does not mean abandoning responsibility. It means engaging with life from a place of presence and discernment rather than fear and reaction. It means understanding that rest, reflection, and patience are not gaps in your effort. They are integral to it. The path of this kind of growth is inherently courageous. It requires confronting the old messages that equate busyness with worth and fatigue with virtue. It requires resisting the urge to measure yourself by the exhaustion you can endure rather than the presence you can maintain. And it requires consistently choosing practices that cultivate safety, alignment, and self-respect. Each time you choose to pause, breathe, reflect, and restore, you reinforce a new model of growth, one that is sustainable, empowering, and deeply humane. Importantly, this approach to growth recognizes the interplay between internal and external life. When your nervous system is regulated, when your body feels safe, and when your mind feels steady, your interactions with the world change. You respond instead of react. You listen instead of defend. You lead instead of chase. You create space for connection, collaboration, and meaningful contribution, not because you are trying to prove anything, but because you are coming from a grounded, resilient place. There is also a profound emotional dimension to growth without exhaustion. By allowing yourself to rest and reclaim your worth outside of doing, you make room to feel fully, to process long-held emotions, and to honor your own humanity. Growth becomes not just about achievement or accumulation, but about the deepening of self-understanding, the expansion of empathy, and the cultivation of inner resilience. You start to see that the capacity to grow is directly tied to the capacity to care for yourself, to listen to your body, and to respect your limits. Every choice to prioritize presence, self-care, and emotional safety is a step toward a different kind of growth. One that values depth over breadth, quality over quantity, and alignment over constant effort. This is the growth that lasts, the kind that replenishes rather than depletes. It is the growth that allows you to show up fully in life without the constant anxiety that comes from chasing worth through work or performance. Ultimately, growth without exhaustion is a reclamation. It is the reclaiming of your energy, your attention, your presence, and your life from patterns that no longer serve you. It is the understanding that your potential is not defined by how much you can endure, but by how deeply you can inhabit your own being. And it is the realization that the most profound accomplishments in life, clarity, connection, creativity, and fulfillment, emerge when you are whole, rested, and aligned, rather than fractured, overextended, and proving your worth through perpetual motion. This growth is not immediate, nor is it easy. It is gradual, layered, and deeply personal. Each moment of conscious pause, each act of gentle self-compassion, and each choice to align with your own rhythm rather than external expectation is a building block. Over time, these choices accumulate, reshaping the way you experience life, work, relationships, and even yourself. You begin to recognize that strength is not measured by how much you endure, but by how you sustain yourself. That resilience is not proven by exhaustion, but by the ability to navigate challenges from a grounded, present, and self-respecting place. That the most profound growth is not achieved at the expense of your well-being, but through practices that honor it. And in this recognition, you find freedom. Freedom from the compulsive drive to prove your worth. Freedom from the fear that rest is failure. Freedom to expand, evolve, and thrive in a way that is sustainable, empowering, and deeply humane. You realize finally that the fullest life, the most meaningful, impactful, and joyful life is not the one that burns the brightest for a short time, but the one that sustains, nourishes, and grows steadily from a place of inner safety, alignment, and self-trust. This is growth without exhaustion. It is the culmination of awareness, vulnerability, courage, and internal safety. It is the choice to live fully, deeply, and wisely, not by doing more, but by being fully present in your own life. It is the ultimate act of reclamation, the quiet victory of a soul that has learned it is safe to pause, safe to breathe, and safe to thrive.